with 107.7 FM New Orleans, broadcasting on multiple platforms like Live 365, Ustream, and Shoutcast, has made the UPRN the longest-running, highly rated, and best source of quality, unique programming that is not afraid of the status quo in alternative media. This station has a solid course of shows and hosts that refuse to get stuck in a rut or be overrun by a groupthink mentality, because station owner, host, and iCar founder Joe Montaldo knows the value of letting his talented stable of hosts grow uninhibited. In this genre, that's an accomplishment which many in alternative radio are striving for.
Church of Mabus.
Into the light. That may be your best see.
Metaphysical.
The dark side.
Haunted houses, anything horror, all of it.
Deeper and 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 higher.
Oh yeah, me like
And higher, deeper and higher and higher and higher and deeper and deeper and higher.
You mean I could go mad?
And higher, deeper. I am the Lord. Rocket, rocket, rocket.
I'm shaking.
The Church of Mabus.
I'm stoked. I'm ready. This is awesome.
Welcome to the Church of Mabus radio show. It's Friday night. You're listening to 107.7 New Orleans and 105.3 Henderson Point, Mississippi. I wanted to plug some books real quick from Bear and Company Inner Traditions, one of my sponsors. They've had a banner on my site forever, and I've interviewed a lot of their authors and told them I'd start plugging some of their books. And we got working on some guests from them as well, but bearandcompanybooks.com, innertraditions.com. First book, the book of, it's hard for me to say this title, it's Hawaiian, so I'm going to get this one out of the way first. The book of Ho'oponopono, the Hawaiian practice of forgiveness and healing. It's a Hawaiian shamanism book, Huna and stuff, but I am having trouble with the Ho'oponopono. I'll spell it, maybe Wham can say it. H-O''Oponopono.
That sounds pretty good, the way you said it.
Ho'oponopono.
Ho'oponopono.
It's a great book, though. I love the Huna Hawaiian shamanism stuff. And then we got a book by Zachariah Sitchin. Yes, he's passed away. God rest his soul. But this joker's still putting out books, man. That sounds like something Nick Redfern would do. Publish books after his death forever. But Sitchin's doing it too. His book is There Were Giants Upon the Earth, Gods, Demigods, and Human Ancestry, the Evidence of Alien DNA. I'm not sure how, I guess they got it from the archives like some Tolkien or something. I don't know how these people come out with books after they pass away, but Hey, more power to them. I wish only I could. Maybe I should start working on my manuscript so when I croak, it releases.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
But another book, Frank Joseph, he's been on the show before about Atlantis, our dolphin ancestors. I always remember that Frank Joseph show because I can't remember the girl's name, but she was co-hosting, the Spanish chick, real cute. But she got on air, and I was doing, testing her for co-host to make sure she had what she, had the jive, so to speak. And she did good at first, but then during that Frank Joseph interview, she was drunk as crazy, and they got in like an argument, and she was rude and weird. Had to fire her, but for some reason I need to get Frank Joseph back on to make up for that one because that was bad. That was terrible.
Well, I'm on here drunk all the time, but
You're not an idiot.
But I'm not
I
me.
mean, I'm drunk. I've drank on the show before, but we don't act like idiots. Like some people get drunk and they just act like they're stupid as hell. It's like whenever I drink or whatever, no one can tell usually that I am at all. They're like, "You are?" It's always been like that for me. I just don't really look it or act it. I think some people feel inclined to put on a show like they're in a Shakespeare play when they're drunk or something automatically.
Well, their inhibitions fly right away.
Yeah. Another book by a good friend Timothy Wiley, Awakening of the Watchers. I would like to get Timothy on again. The Secret Mission of the Rebel Angels in the Forbidden Quadrant. He's into Urantia and stuff. It's a very interesting book for sure. Plus, it upsets a lot of Christians because he claims that Lucifer was forgiven and they've come back to heaven to reinstate Earth and help humanity. That all the fallen angels are good now. So,
Bully for them.
Yeah, hooray! It is weird lately how all these weird shows like Constantine. Yeah, sort of. Constantine. What's the other show? Lucifer. Like all these weird Satan characters are coming on TV shows, but they're like good. Like Lucifer's Lucifer, but he helps people and he's a police detective.
Yeah, I don't have TV, so I don't watch any of that stuff. But I have seen the ads for it.
Yeah, well, that was from some comic book, Vertigo comic book, a long time ago. I didn't finish watching it, but my nephew and brother watch it. I couldn't do it. I got enough on my agenda. Plus, it's hard for me to watch stuff on Fox.
Yeah.
I don't want any of that right-wing smut to peel off on me while I'm watching one of those shows. Okay, one more book. Becoming Nature, Learning the Language of Wild Animals and Plants, Tamarack by Tamarack Song. I've interviewed him before. He's pretty cool, some shamanism and talking to animals and stuff. All right, we're done with that. All righty, tonight's guest, Joe Gisondi, Monster Trek, The Obsessive Search for Bigfoot. How you doing, Joe?
Very good. How you doing?
Doing all right, sort of.
Sort of?
Yeah, just sort of. It's starting to get hot. It's weird. It's going to be like 49 here in Florida tonight, but pretty soon, this is the last whimpers of whatever cold are shooting through the panhandle, but pretty soon it's probably going to be 110 degrees.
Well, I was driving through Chicago today, and it was snowing on me.
Wow. Yeah. Lucky.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like living in a tropical jungle down here. Well, that's,
yeah.
Well, I guess, what originally got you started with Bigfoot to begin with? What made you interested in the subject? How did that come about?
Well, a couple things. One is I grew up my first 15 years in New Jersey, and we would get all kinds of papers from New York and Newark and everything. But my mother also used to be on the National Enquirer, and back in the 70s, it included more stuff like Bigfoot and ghosts and paranormal than the TMZ stuff you catch today. So I read that, and I was always interested, and through the years I kept an interest in it, and then I moved to Florida. I lived in Florida for 24 years, so you'd always hear about the skunk ape, and I was hiking a lot and camping a lot and canoeing. My wife was a biologist down there, so every time I catch something, I'd be very interested in it. And as a journalism teacher, I always thought, I tell my students, if you're interested in find a good story, find people who are passionate about something, and I don't know many people who are far more passionate about things than people who search for Bigfoot, so that got me into writing a book on it.
So what was your plan to start to get immersed into it? What did you do? Did you start writing people on the subject? Did you already know some of them? What was your battle plan, so to speak, when you first began the project?
I didn't know anybody, so what I did is, like so many other people, I Googled Bigfoot and saw what names and articles and such popped up. And the ones at the time, I started writing this, 2009, started doing the research. Two names that popped up right away were Tom Biscardi and Moneymaker's BFRO, Bigfoot Research Organization. So I reached out to both of them, and Tom Biscardi actually called me within a few hours, and we started chatting and talking, and people who were in the Bigfoot community know a whole lot about him. He's known for several hoaxes, including the Georgia Bigfoot hoax, and with the cadaver that he claimed, well, somebody else claimed actually, and he was part of that as well. He was very, very nice on the phone and everything. As a matter of fact, I was supposed to be with him the week right before that all happened, but then something else happened that I couldn't get down there, and then I went on a couple of BFRO just to meet people. I went with one in the Ouachita Mountains in Oklahoma, not far from the Folk area where the Legend of Boggy Creek is, and then I went on another one in North Carolina. And after that, a couple of things happened. One was I needed to go out and visit with, not just one organization, as many other people as possible. So I had heard some names, and that's how I cultivated some names as well. The second thing was they banned me from any other Bigfoot research for a short period of time because I failed to sign any of the non-disclosure agreements, which as a journalist I would never do.
Yeah.
So that's how I started it.
So did you actually go out? You actually went to the areas, and did you actually go into the woods and everything with them? I mean, I know you went to the different areas, but you actually went in with, who did you go in with?
Yeah, that was part of it. I planned on writing about going on expeditions with the folks that were out there, and then of course doing extra research and learning more about the people who were on there and interviewing the people who are there. So I went out in the Ouachita Mountains and the eastern part of Oklahoma. I went out in the Uwharrie Mountains in central North Carolina, almost more eastern. I went out in the Green Swamp down in Florida, not far from Dade City. Went out with Dr. Jeff Meldrum and John Mazinski out in the Wind River Mountains down in Idaho. Went out around Ohio with Don Keating around Salt Fork State Park. And southern Illinois down here in the mountains in the southern part of the state here. Well, sort of mountains, hills, I guess. And northern Wisconsin, and I'm trying to think if I forgot anything. I pretty much picked places that were not the Pacific Northwest because everybody seems to focus on the Pacific Northwest.
So when you were
I went out with them sometimes late, sometimes till 3, 4 in the morning, going out there and traipsing around and sitting in different spots, and it was a lot of fun. There was a lot of interesting things that happened too. So,
what were some of you? Did you have some experiences?
Well, I never saw anything. I think the first time I went out, I was out with out in the Oklahoma mountains that I mentioned, and Matt Moneymaker came to meet me, and I followed him out to an area, and he gave me one of these. Generation 1 or 2, I forget whatever generation it was, where you can look through the night scopes and it looks almost clear as day. And probably within the first 10 minutes I was out there looking out, I saw something that looked like a Bigfoot kneeling down looking at me from probably, 50, 80 yards away, something like that. And I couldn't believe the first time I'd be out there that I could actually see something. So I called Matt over. He looked in the direction I was looking, didn't see anything. I pointed there, and I didn't see anything. So it was either A, there was an actual Bigfoot there looking out at me, or it was my imagination. It was one of the two. In the Florida Green Swamp, I heard one night at 3 in the morning, somebody made a call, and the area we were around was very, very dense. You being down in Florida, you can appreciate that, certainly, but there's some areas that you just have to hack through. My wife, as I mentioned, was a biologist, and she'd go out in different areas, and I'd sometimes go out with her just to see what she was doing. It was always an interesting job. And somebody made a call, and something came crashing through the woods with these amazing sounds that sounded ultimately like, the crew from the Planet of the Apes was coming down on us from like two different directions, and then just stopped about probably 10 yards from the tree line where we were standing there. So that was the one that probably got the hairs on the back of my neck the most. And there were several other incidents that were, possibly could have been Bigfoot activity, but of course I have no evidence. And so if there's something didn't happen, I wasn't going to claim that it did.
So at any time did any of the people go into what they thought Bigfoot was, and what are your thoughts on what do you think Bigfoot is exactly?
Well, if Bigfoot exists, I guess, I am not a scientist in any way, so I can't really talk about that, but you mentioned what people say. I've heard everything from Gigantopithecus blackie, which would be, pardon my science background, I forget where it sits as far as Homo erectus and Neanderthal, but it was a humanoid-like creature that overlapped part of one of those, one of the past humanoids, and was believed to be extinct, but they're not sure if maybe this is an extenuation of it and it's actually living out there. Some people think that it's just another, not a humanoid, that it's just another animal out there in the woods that's been able to elude us, sort of like the gorillas did in Africa for all those years. I've heard some people say that it's a multi-dimensional creature, and that's why you can't find it. It can go into different dimensions. And I remember talking to Eric Beckford, who is somebody who's into a couple of different things, and he was claiming some of that as well. Some I've even read, someone didn't tell me, but I was reading about some people thinking that these are actually aliens that are visiting us and seeing it. So,
man, I'm kind of in that camp. That's just I've interviewed a lot of different shamans and different people, and they believe that as well, that they're multidimensional. So I'm kind of in that camp. But I'm open to, people thinking it's, just physical only. We have a lot of people on that, just think it's physical. But I've had people on like Stan Gordon who chronicles in Pennsylvania UFO sightings mixed with Bigfoot at the same time. Like he is a top-notch investigator, and he has all these cases of people seeing Bigfoot and UFOs and just weird stories that he chronicles from different witnesses. So I'm kind of in that camp. I think there's something weird going on for sure with that. But nobody really knows 100% though, of course. You can only speculate, I guess, on some level. But
sure, absolutely.
But I definitely, sometimes I wonder if Bigfoot's like humans on another timeline. But like in another timeline or something weird, like some kind of time travel thing.
you just never know. I mean, my thought as a journalist is that until I get actual evidence, I'm not going to say anything. I want to believe in a lot of different things, and my mind is open to so many different things. But I went out there, not necessarily though to prove whether or not Bigfoot exists. My main mission here is really I wanted to. I was fascinated by the people who devote a big chunk of their lives to looking for Bigfoot, because if it does exist, then that's interesting enough. If it doesn't exist, that makes you think, why are they spending all this time on something that perhaps could not exist? So I was most fascinated by the humans around more than the Bigfoot activity, and that's what I tried to focus on a whole lot in the book. Although I did talk about the expeditions and talked about paranormal activities. There's a lot of paranormal activity in the areas that we researched, particularly, the area of the Uwharrie Mountains and southern Illinois and things like that. So I thought that was an equally fascinating part of it.
We've had Stacy Brown on before. He was on a $1 Million Bigfoot Bounty. Are you familiar with Stacy Brown?
I know the name. I don't know many details though.
Well, he's
I'm familiar with the show though. Is that the person who won it?
Yeah, he won with that thermal. He had some thermal video with his dad that was really good, and they caught like Bigfoot.
Oh, okay,
on thermal.
yeah.
They had to do like
okay.
Yeah, I didn't get to see the show, but he said that there were some kind of exercises they won or something like that. But he lives near me, and he says there's a lot of activity around here. And I've always jokingly say, for some reason, like when I was a kid, I thought I saw a Bigfoot, but I'm not 100% sure because there was this little weird bully kid, and he might have messed with my head some, trying to make me think that's what I saw or something like that. And I went,
right.
And I went home and freaked out, and my mom called the police, and then I drew a Bigfoot. So it's kind of one of those situations where I'm not sure if I saw one. Maybe it was an overactive imagination, or I don't know. But I've always said that it seems like the Bigfoot show themselves to a lot of right-wing extremists who want to shoot them in the face. they never shoot themselves to me, though. The guy who wrote a book called Bigfoot. So I've seen a lot of weird UFO stuff. So, I mean, a lot of weird UFO stuff. So I'm surprised I haven't had more Bigfoot stuff going on. But
I forget. You're in the Panhandle, correct?
Yeah, I'm originally from Georgia, and I live in the Panhandle now.
Okay, because I know that area in the Panhandle, as you know, is so thick, and I lived right across the bay from Cape Canaveral, and knew a security guard there, and that stuff is so thick and tangled, and there were some reports in that area too. So I know the Panhandle around, Tyndall Air Force Base, and the other something is so thick that they do training there. So if a Bigfoot exists, I would tend to think it would be in that area.
Yeah, I'm in Marianna. It's about 40 minutes from Panama City and Dothan, Alabama.
Oh, sure. I know. I went through there a couple of weeks ago. Okay.
Yeah, there's a creepy school here called Dozier School. It looks like something out of Stephen King, and it's from it's about 15 minutes from here, but it was in the 60s. It was like some weird black slave camp, and they keep finding all these unmarked bodies in it by the hundreds.
Wow.
It's not too far from here. I wonder if it's put a dark cloud over this town, but that place is so creepy. Like, they won't let anybody in it or anything, and it's like it looks like Shawshank Redemption.
Well, there are those who believe that Bigfoot hang around cemeteries because people don't like to hang out at cemeteries. I hung out with a cemetery with one guy one night in North Carolina, and it was kind of creepy for a little bit, yeah.
So where were you? You were born in Florida or somewhere else?
I was born in New Jersey, but when I was 15, I moved to Florida. So I lived everywhere from down to Fort Lauderdale, Fort Myers, Orlando, Gainesville, Titusville.
Florida. What made you move down here? Military or something? Family military?
No, my father was built pools and decided he could sell a lot more in Florida than he could in New Jersey. And then after I got older, I was working at different newspapers. So every couple of years, I'd move here or there, or finish up in school in another area. So just hanged around that way.
Yeah, my dad passed away in my early 20s, and my mom was like, when we got the insurance money and stuff, like, let's go to Florida. And we went down here.
Well, there's some pretty parts of it.
It's okay, I guess. Sometimes. Stay away from most of the people. I live in the woods, but Stacy Brown lives around me, and he, surprisingly, when I first met him and we talked, I figured he wasn't into, I figured he was strictly Bigfoot was physical, but he surprised me. He was talking about weird orbs and stuff he's seen, and with Bigfoot stuff, like spears floating around. He's kind of
who was saying that?
Stacy Brown.
Oh, okay, because I've heard stories about, like, the will-o'-the-wisps and the orbs and things like that.
He had an encounter where it was a Bigfoot, and then there was some kind of orb activity. But let's go over to WHAM. Remember that WHAM? You brought up Dolotov or whatever, Dolotov incident with the orb.
Oh, no, the Dyatlov incident.
Yeah, I can't say that.
Well, I wasn't going to ask him about that right away, but no, I was when you were first talking about the people that you started interviewing. You mentioned that one guy right at the beginning who had been involved in all those hoaxes and stuff.
Tom Biscardi.
Yeah, right. I can never remember his name.
That's okay.
And I was curious because I've done quite a bit of work I wrote my dissertation on UFO abduction narratives, and so a part of that deals with people who hoax things, and how that's, in a sense, that's actually a very interesting kind of thing, because a lot of times, at least in the UFO community, individuals who hoax, like photographs or film, for example, they're not necessarily trying to fool people in the hard sense, and they're not disbelievers in the phenomena. It's sort of like they actually are believers, but at least in the case of UFOs, a lot of times, and maybe they have seen something or have had some kind of an experience, but you can't always produce those on command. So sometimes they will actually produce hoaxes in order to try to illustrate things that they've experienced, or things that they think will be more convincing to people. And this, a very similar phenomena to that phenomenon exists among some people who claim to have had sightings of, like, the Blessed Virgin Mary. That's where I actually first got the notion to sort of look into that. And that doesn't mean that all the things are hoaxed or anything like that. But what I was curious about was when you got to know this guy and talk to him a little bit. Did you talk to him at all about his hoaxing and what that was about, or?
No, unfortunately. After the situation in Georgia, I was in the midst of, I was supposed to go meet them in an area near Mount Mitchell, which is in northeast sort of part of North Carolina. I've actually hiked and camped in there. It's the highest peak in the eastern coast of the United, I think east of the Mississippi. And then I wasn't hearing anything from them, and I didn't want to drive. It's probably roughly 9 or 10 hours to get down there. And then this whole thing broke up, in the Georgia boys down in with the cadaver down there, and I was never able to talk to them again. They weren't returning my emails or my phone, because I would have been fascinated to learn more about what he does, why he does it. We chatted probably for an hour the first time I talked to him, but at that point I knew very little of his background besides what I saw real quick online. It was over the ensuing months and years that I learned some of these other things, and I would love to sit down and talk to him if he would be willing to be candid and talk about it. Because, I mean, I think if you're a good hoaxer, you have to be very personable, and he is very personable, and he seemed, rather nice, and I get along with most people anyway. But I would love to learn more about that, because the hoaxing the people I've talked to, I've seen little hoaxes and talked to people who have been hoaxed themselves, Bigfoot researchers, and some people do it as performance art, actually. I was talking on some show in New York last week, and somebody called in and said, I do this as performance art towards NFA. And but a lot of them are really, I find a lot of them are, it seems like it must be different than the UFO phenomenon, in the sense that the hoaxers I have heard about, at least the ones I've heard about, are ones who don't believe and are really trying to poke fun at the Bigfoot community. There's some exceptions, but that seems to be someone like probably Lauren Coleman could probably speak more expertly on something like that, but that's been my experience, at least.
Right. I mean, there are different types of hoaxes too. The types of people that I've been referring to are people like Edward Billy Meyer, for example, who hoaxed all of those incredible photos of his Pleiadian starships. I hope I'm not blowing anybody's brain up, not yours, but somebody else who might be listening. And some other people that I've met, and including some people that are not necessarily famous, but have, sent their films and videos my way. And when I interview them, when I look at them, when I talk to them, it's clear to me that they do believe on some level in something, but they, like I said, they can't just produce things on command. And then there are other hoaxes, and those are hoaxes that maybe have a slightly more sinister configuration, and those are known hoaxes that government agencies have committed in order to, either cover up testing of new hardware, or in order to test the UFO psychological social milieu, for disinformation purposes, or to see whether or not it could, that those populations could be used for psychological warfare or something like that. I mean, all of that, things like that have been admitted by the CIA over the years in declassified documents. So that's a whole different level of hoax, obviously. But I was go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to finish up what I was going to say, but go ahead.
No, I was going to say it sounds interesting, the things that you're talking about. The people a lot of the people I came across were people who they believe they had an encounter, or the ones that are certain of it want to relive it. But there's many people who feel or think they had an encounter, and they either really can't believe they actually did, or they're not sure what they saw. So they're going out on these expeditions to try to relive it that way. I don't know if that's the same way you're talking about, with the hoax is trying to relive it, but these people are trying to authenticate what it was that they saw by actually repeating it. And the thing about Bigfoot, if Bigfoot exists, if we start with the premise that Bigfoot exists, few people see it multiple times. Like an average person who's not spending an inordinate amount of time trying to do that. So it's a very difficult task for them to authenticate what they had. So what they do sometimes is then start talking to other people and trying to do it that way. And again, I don't have any idea if that's a connection to what you're talking about on the UFO side.
Yeah, I mean, people that have had experiences. I mean, I think when anybody has a kind of unusual experience, or a lot of people when they have unusual experiences, it's sort of it changes their sense of what reality might be about, and it can be kind of, even it can be exhilarating, and it can be kind of scary and unsettling too. And so I think what people do then, I mean, a lot of people anyway, they want to first of all make sure they're not nuts. And then also they want to see if other people have had other experiences, and this is again to not see if they're not nuts. But then they also want to find out if there's anything that can be known about these things. There is. I mean, I was reading the description of your book, and there is, especially in the UFO community as well. There's this obsessive quality that, I mean, I certainly had it for many, many years. This kind of weird, intense compulsion to try to figure out what it all was. I mean, I had a really vivid, intense UFO experience with a friend when I was 6 years old, and it changed my life. And I to this day, I don't know what I saw. For sure, it just wasn't. It wasn't in anything that I had any frame of reference for, and so I think that a lot of people are, it's kind of like I've likened it to like looking for God. They're looking for something.
Well, that's really what this book is in many ways, was me talking about faith, and it's not a spiritual or religious book in that spectrum, but I make the analogy, and I talk about it a lot in the book, is the whole idea of faith is, if you haven't seen one, you're taking it on faith that it exists, and if you're not sure if you saw it, you're having faith that maybe that did take place. And faith is a very, it's a very difficult thing. I mean, I talked to one of the priests at the church in Florida I was at one time, and I said, "Oh my God, how do you have such faith? I look around and these people have amazing faith, and I'm always struggling." And he goes, "Hey, these people scare me too." He goes, no one has all the answers. That's why they call it faith. And, and of course, the difference is, is that Bigfoot exists or UFOs are in here. We can actually probably get that kind of tangible proof. But there are some analogies. There's, parallels between the two.
Yeah. So who did you find to be one of the more interesting people that you talked to?
There were so many. As I had hoped, there were so many great stories and great people that I was able to talk to. A couple of them, real quick, would be one would be John Lazinski. He's a scientist that works with Dr. Jeff Meldrum. Dr. Jeff Meldrum is the one who looks at footprints and locomotion, and he's a professor of anthropology at Idaho State. So when I was up in the Wind River Mountains and talking to him, I got to learn about John Mazinski, and I did some research afterwards. But John is one of those guys who is a scientist by application. He only has his bachelor's, but my God, he's got so much information. He was someone who was in the midst of the grizzly bear count back in the 70s to find out how many there were Yellowstone in that area, and he would put himself in harm's way by just going in one of these little mummy. He was testing, going, "Oh, the grizzly bear won't eat me," and he went out in the middle of a field with a mummy sleeping bag, and a big old grizzly did come up to him, and at the time, then he goes, "Oh my God, this thing's going to eat me," which it did not. And then he said, "Oh man, it didn't eat me. Let me repeat that process." I mean, he's just a pure scientist, and this is a guy who knows a lot in the woods. Just really, really bright. Keeps journals, and he lives off the grid in an area. He built a house with discarded wood and fence posts and things like that. And just could build everything. Rebuilt an old motorcycle. Well, this is a guy who's very scientific, who recounted a story where he's pretty certain that he encountered a Bigfoot because two state wildlife officers who didn't believe in any of this stuff came up to him and said, "We're seeing them in this area." And he went out there, and I mean, his story was fabulous, out in there. Another one was Don Young, who made his life as an outdoor guide in northern Wisconsin, who eventually now is a shaman for an Indian tribe up in that area. He's part Indian, Native American. And he was so scared at one point, he was afraid to go into the woods. And this is a guy who would just pop out in the woods and sleep, with no sweat, and bring people out in the woods. And when he saw one, actually he saw twice in his area out there in northern Wisconsin, he lost his livelihood because people thought he was too crazy to go out in the woods with, to show them how to hunt deer. And this guy even wrote a book, I believe, on hunting white-tailed deer. He has since been able to rally and go back out into the woods. So, I mean, those are two really interesting people. But man, I've got Charlie and Solomon going out in the woods, and there's so many people that just do stuff that are just so fascinating. And one guy was telling me out in eastern Kentucky how he at one point, he just said he saw UFOs on several occasions. He said he saw shadow people. He said he had seen a Bigfoot once, and he says he regularly sees rods. So this is someone who either is connected in some way to the universe, or is lying and has some sort of craziness to him. I mean, I'm not. Who am I to judge one way or the other? I just don't know. But he had some interesting stories as well. So that's what really, again, drove this project and the book as well.
Well, one of my big things I've dealt with a lot of people in the Bigfoot community who, if they know that you think Bigfoot's paranormal on any level, they attack you. They kind of like the Inquisition, the Spanish Inquisition. They find out.
You're darn right. Yeah, exactly.
I've had them threaten me up, stalk me, all kinds of stuff.
but they attack each other. There's a lot of people that they go after each other. It is a really. Don Keating is someone who started the Bigfoot conference in Salt Fork State Park and ran it for over 20 years. He eventually, one of the things that drove him out was that he was out there wanting to just share information regardless of what it was, whether it was the paranormal or what. I mean, he doesn't believe it is, but he was willing to share information. But he kept getting attacked. And there's some really great people trying to find some stuff out there, but there's so many people attacking one another, perhaps for the reason you said, or others.
Yeah, there's definitely some nuts. I've ran into them for sure. Well, it's weird. Yeah. I ask people who are into the ghost thing why they do it, and I always ask, is it because they're trying to find out, about life after death? And a lot of them say no. I would think that would be like the main reason that if I was going to go hunting ghosts, which I don't do. I mean, I've gone to some haunted places, but I don't like go out there with equipment and stuff. because basically I've seen enough weird stuff to where I know there's other stuff going on. I've had mass UFO sightings after I was healed from testicular cancer, my father's death. I've seen beams of light leaving my house. I could go on and on and on. I've seen enough stuff to where I don't really need to go looking for anything. But the point I'm at now is like I haven't seen anything in a while, and I start feeling weird when I don't see something. It's like there's this part of me that just wants to always experience something else. And when it's been a while, I'm like, well, why am I not seeing anything? And it hasn't been that long. About I can't even remember my last experience. Maybe a year or so ago, or I think it was a few years ago when I seen the light beings leaving my house. And after my dad died, I had a light being visit me as well. I just saw it like a person made out of light. But now
that's interesting.
Now it's been a while since I've seen anything, so I'm always like wanting to see it, and then I don't, and I get frustrated. So it's like I'm in a dry desert now with no experiences. I'm like, am I watching too much superhero cosplay porn? I mean, what's going on here?
Yeah. Well, you know what? There were a couple of people on some of these expeditions that would recount some ghost experiences that they had. One person told me about a really scary one in Virginia on the south, I guess it would be the southeast part of Virginia, no, southwest part of Virginia. He's a direct descendant, he says, to one of the people who were hung as witches out in Salem. But he saw something in an old abandoned church, and he brought his wife there one time to show it, and he said it was just scary seeing these white figures that almost looked like aliens, actually, in the windows there. And he says he just finally got so scared he was afraid to go back.
And what were they, white? They white?
He said it was this window, and he said it was like you see these white ghostly figures going through the windows or the doors. And the last time he went, he got really close to the door, and he said the head and face and shape is similar to the, the stereotypical look of like the little green or gray men with the head and the narrow neck and all the other stuff. And he said that just freaked him out too much and creeped him out. There was no way he was going back.
Well, the point I'm at now is I've seen these light beings, and I've seen them. Like sometimes I can wake up from sleep in the middle of the night and look at the stars, and I see stars, and then I see like these beings all around the planet. I think there's a quantum realm around the planet. When you die, you get sucked into it, and you go to wherever. But it's like a staging area, and I'm like at 100% now, to where I've seen them enough to where I believe when we're in these bodies, that's what we are. But when we're out of these bodies, we're like a being of light. Like an alien, and I always bring up the movie Cocoon by Ron Howard, like those little light beings in Cocoon. But
right.
The whole Bible's based on Jesus getting a new light body. So I mean, this stuff's in every religion, just about light bodies and stuff. I was just reading scripture recently about the whole light body Jesus situation. I forget which one because my memory's terrible, but I was just reading that not too long ago. But and then we've had a guest on, Peter Panagore, who died on a mountain, and he got left on a mountain when he was mountain climbing, and he had an afterlife experience, and he basically described himself as a being of light. He said, of course, it's more complex than that, but when you see it, I guess, from the physical realm, it just looks like a being of light, but he said it's a lot more complex, of course, which I'm sure it is on some level. But
right.
Oh, I know what I wanted to say. We had a shaman on from Peru who kind of validated that I was right on about everything, and he said down in Peru that they meet in large crowds and watch the shining ones in the sky during particular points of time during the day or night. So basically all these people in Peru gather and watch beams of light flying around in the sky whenever. It's like part of their daily gig. So it's definitely something with the light beings. And then, of course, a lot of people think Bigfoot can shapeshift, or that it's a trickster-like energy that takes form into a Bigfoot or whatever, that shapeshifts. back and forth.
And even psychic abilities, some people have claimed. There was one person out, gosh, I wish I could remember his name, who claimed that when he was out in the woods, he could hear the thoughts of Bigfoot and would say, nope, you're not going to see me tonight, I'm out here. And so there were several people who were claiming that there's some psychic ability, and that's why we can't find them. They can read our thoughts to know where we are and what have you. So, I mean, there's all kinds of different theories, one way or the other.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to see one, but I'm not going to go out there and like go hunting for them and stuff. Because also there's a lot of theories lately about the missing 411 connection and all these missing people, and people are trying to say it's cannibal Sasquatches, which, I'm not saying they all do that, but there could be some out there, for all we know, that treats humans like chicken.
Well, I mean, if there's a creature or a humanoid or whatever it happens to be that lives in the woods, and it's that large, and it's smart enough to elude us with all of the things we're doing all these years, who's to say something that large wouldn't want to cherry pick if they felt like they could? I've heard one theory, one from one branch of folks that say that they don't want to kill in areas where they live because then it would draw attention to people and more researchers and having people come in. But on the other hand, if it's a large area, who knows? And I can't believe that. I mean, humans aren't gentle. Why would a creature that's part humanoid, if we believe that it is, be gentle? If we were out in the woods, if we went to Africa, I do not believe that gorillas would just not attack us in certain situations. I know that they didn't with Jane Goodall and some of the others, but I've got to believe that there's some sort of attacks from apes in that area. So that book is really interesting, the premise on there, but who knows? It could happen if Bigfoot's out there.
Definitely. I mean, if they're tribe-like, I mean, there have been tribes throughout history that eat people. I mean, then there's the Native American stories about Bigfoot or giant-like creatures eating them and stuff. So, I mean, there definitely could be too.
Yeah, well, there's a whole lot of it. As a matter of fact, I did some research on all the Native American tribes, and I don't think I even caught them all, but there was at least 40 tribes and all the different names that they give them. And there's the wild man, and they're worried about them coming to, like you said, to eat them. And this goes across whether it's the Pacific Northwest or down in Florida, because in Florida, actually, there's some reputation of them being very, very aggressive. The southern ones sometimes tend to be a little bit more aggressive, the stories at least, in some other areas. So something else I had heard from a Native American, some of the research there, was that any place that you hear with the name devil, if it comes from the Indian tribes, they would name it those things, so you would know not to go in those areas. So a lot of real interesting Native American connections to Bigfoot.
Somebody named Devil's Road not too far from me. I'm like, who would name that? Why? Those kind of creeps. There's an Angel's Road and a Devil's Road. I haven't gone down them. But,
like if there's a name that's like a hollow, or I forget, there's like if there's a Devil's Lake and that name was passed on from years and years ago, not just created by the new zoning board or something. That's what they're talking about. Yeah.
Oh, I know. We're going to go on break in a minute. I'm waiting for the signal from Joe. But I know you mentioned that there's no Bigfoot sightings in Hawaii at all. Never heard.
That's the only state where there's none. There are, though, stories of these small wild men that live in the area, but no Bigfoot at all. Which I don't know why, because every state has reports of them, and many, many countries have reports of different ones. The Southeast Asia one is something that's really getting real popular right now. I believe Cliff Berkman and several others are doing research there. And there's the Almasty in Russia. I know that Jeff Meldrum, Dr. Meldrum, is interested in. So it was really surprising. But here's something else. When I started doing the research, there was not a single report, at least on the DFRO database, from Rhode Island. And then they started having lots of them there. So the database there is kind of interesting because, if people report things, that's how they get on there. It doesn't mean that there's necessarily something there, but people reporting that. So maybe no one in Hawaii has. Either people in Hawaii are more grounded, or there's nothing there.
I was going to say they got that hoodoo there.
Yeah.
Like there's two theories we've joked about on the show. Bigfoot's a ghost of a caveman, and also Bigfoot lives in the hollow earth and rides dinosaurs.
Well,
like Land of the Lost.
Yep, yeah.
Oh, there's another one I saw. I think it was a comic, something about Han Solo dies, or somehow Chewbacca becomes Bigfoot and they discover its body or something. Some kind of comic where somehow the Wookiee is actually Bigfoot and gets tied into modern reality some kind of weird way, with some Star Wars comic or something, or What If Star Wars or something. All right,
gotcha.
Yeah, we're about to go on break. We'll be back in about 8 minutes with the rest of the show. Joe, just don't hang up, and we'll be back shortly. We're going on break, so...
Alrighty.
Oh, alrighty, thank you.
I'll be right back.
Invited to the Quantum Leap Let Light Unite show every Friday night on United Public Radio Network from 9 to 10 p.m. Pacific Time, 12 to 1 a.m. Eastern Time, with your spiritual warrior goddess, Kathy Bilski. Kathy will share all the old truths the Illuminati tries to keep secret. Kathy also gives you the opportunity to join in with planetary healing light work that will help us manifest World Enlightenment 2016. So let's get high and fly into new possibilities. So join Kathy every Friday night on UPRN, the Quantum Leap Let Light Unite show. A very powerful happening.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Benetti, and along with Joe Montaldo, we host News on the Flip Side. Come join us every Saturday night at 7 p.m. Central for our 3-hour program. We have opinions on everything, and we're not afraid to share them. False history gets made all day, every day. The truth of the new is never on the news, but you can find it here with News on the Flip Side. Remember, don't be politically correct. Just be correct. Join us.
Do you love sports? Okay, maybe just at least pay attention to sports. Then check out the Big Shoulder Sports Show, Tuesday night, 7 to 9 Eastern on UPRNTalkRadio.com and 107.7 FM out of New Orleans. JT, Justin, and I spill our guts about all things Cubs, White Sox, Blackhawks, Bulls, and Bears with no filter, the way nature intended sports to be heard. We also cover the national news in the sports world, but really, that's just because we have to. The Big Shoulder Sports Show, live Tuesdays 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern, right here on UPRNTalkRadio.com and 107.7 FM out of New Orleans. Or check out the podcast on Podbean, iTunes, and SoundCloud. 3 guys saying words, making radio happen every week.
Tune in to UFO Undercover Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern, with your host, Joe Montaldo, right here on the Paranormal Radio Network.
Church of Mabus.
Into the light. That may be your fantasy.
Metaphysical.
The dark side.
Haunted houses, I like anything horror, genre, all of it. All of it.
Deeper and 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 higher.
Oh yeah, me like it.
Higher, deeper and higher and higher and higher and deeper and deeper and higher.
You mean I could go mad?
Higher, deeper. I am the Lord. Rocket, rocket, rocket.
Thank you.
The Church of Mabus.
I'm stoked. I'm ready. This is awesome.
Welcome back to the Church of Mabus radio show. All right. Got everybody back with us?
Oh, yeah. I was just burping over here, so I couldn't be right there at the microphone.
So, Wham, you want to lead in?
Oh, okay. Let's see. I asked him about the people. Are you there, Joe?
Yes, I am.
Okay. The other thing that I was interested in when you were talking about it is that, or when you were talking about your experiences, what were some of the things that were the most difficult for the kind of research that you were doing? I mean, you were doing research like on people, you know, and sometimes doing research on the communities, you know, paranormal communities, which is what I've done a lot of my research on too. That's really challenging in some very specific ways because you're dealing with people who have very strong convictions and beliefs about things and sometimes can be kind of sensitive, you know, about those convictions and beliefs. And what were some of the challenges that you found yourself facing that maybe in doing that maybe you hadn't expected?
Sure. Really, to tell you the truth, not a whole lot came here that was unexpected because having been a journalist for many, many years, I've come across so many different people, and I can sort of have a sense usually when people want to talk, what not to talk. And when I came up to talk to everybody, I believe in being candid as a journalist in every sense, which is I told them I'm here to write a story about why people are searching for Bigfoot. I told them I'm not sure if a Bigfoot exists or not. I don't disbelieve, but I'm not a true believer either. I want Bigfoot to exist, and it would be a cool thing, and I'm fascinated by it, but I'm really doing it on why they're doing it. I also told them, I'm not here to make fun of you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not here to make you look like a hero either. I'm here to paint what I experienced and what I saw to the best of my abilities. And I think the fact that not a whole lot of people have really talked to them about why they do it. So that attracted a lot of people to it. The other one is I know a lot of people research me and Googles me and everything to find out, because I also have another book on how to cover sports. I did a lot of sports reporting in addition to this, and they looked at my background and saw I was a professor here at the university. So I had those credentials coming in. So they came in trusting me. There are even a few people who said they do not want to be in the book because of their professions, but they would be more than glad to talk to me off the record, which I honored, of course. And the more that they talked to me and told me things, and I got a lot of background information that way. The biggest challenge in all reporting, whether it's on Bigfoot or covering our legislators in here in Illinois with budget issues, is somebody telling the truth. And as police officers will tell you too, is that some of the best and worst testimony is first eyewitness accounts, because people don't remember all the things that they see. I mean, they see things, but they're not trained to look at things in the manner in which a police officer is. And even a police officer sometimes will have some difficulty, of course, too. So that was probably the biggest struggle for me, is that when people would tell me things, I can't verify. I can't go back in the woods when they actually saw what they saw. So I tried to make it as clear as possible. Here's what people are telling me what they saw. I can't verify it. And I had to make that clear, that this is not an authoritative book in the sense that I know everything is true or not. But the stories that they tell me, whether they're true or not, say something about the people who are telling me those stories. So that helped to define them. That was another piece that added another layer to each of the people there. So that's always the biggest challenge when you're interviewing people, is what to believe and what not to believe. And I think it's important to let the reader know when you've been able to verify some things and when not. And the other thing is, just because somebody tells you something, do you report it? There are some things as far as filter, and I didn't have any filter as far as protecting people or to make them look good. The filter is really what's really that important. And if someone does one silly little thing in the midst of all that, is that one thing which is unusual going to define that person? That's a tough ethical choice, what to do there. But I didn't go out of my way to say, oh, they did this one thing, let's make fun of it. And the more I talked to people, the more word got around that I'm not here to make fun of them. I know that in part because when I was banned from the BFRO for a while there, several of the investigators and researchers who I talked to came to my defense, saying, wow.
Was there anything surprising about the kinds of people that you found who research Bigfoot?
I was going in. It's funny because when I talked to people about when I was talking to people about this project as I was working on it, people going, "Oh, I bet those people are a bunch of crazy whackouts," and I was thinking, no, I didn't go in with that belief, because the one thing journalism will teach you, if nothing else, is that whenever you have expectations about a person, no sooner will something be completely different. You can't stereotype, you can't generalize, you can't do all of those different things. So I wasn't really surprised personally the variety of people there. Here's one thing I really was surprised though, how candid everybody was with me. I consider myself a good interviewer. I try to be truthful. That said, Bigfoot researchers get poked fun out all the time. A lot of times in media coverage, you can just Google it and look at TV stations having a quick little take and newspapers. It's changed a little bit over the last couple of years, but it's still a way to make fun of these folks here. And I thought that they would be a lot more reticent to talk to me, and I found that to be the exact opposite. They wanted to tell their stories. They really wanted to tell the stories there. I mean, if I wanted to, I could have probably gone on an expedition with a group almost every single weekend and written, a 1,000-page book on this. So I was very pleased with the reaction, and I find the people out there to be, they were very receptive and very candid and kind with their time. But the people is, I think one question maybe gearing towards too is, there wasn't a lot of diversity there. I had people who were engineers, who were CEOs of banks, who were researchers in different scientific fields, and also people who, were struggling to get jobs and all kinds of other different things there. So there was certainly a wide variety of people. There wasn't nearly as much scientific background among the people who were going out there. But there was certainly a passion to see what the heck that they could find.
Right. Well, and that's what I have found here. I mean, I live in the Hudson Valley, mid-Hudson Valley, New York, and
oh yeah, my cousin owns a brewery up there.
Oh, what brewery is that?
Newburgh.
Oh yeah, that's south of where I'm at.
Yeah, it's right there on the Hudson River there. Yeah. It's great beer. Free plug for him.
But I'm friends with Gail Beatty, who founded the Hudson Valley Bigfoot Research Group, and I mean that's what I've sort of acted as a consultant for the group. Because I've kind of given up some of my field searching ways. I've done enough of the stomping around looking for UFOs that I really don't need to do a lot of squatching in what I call lime land, which is what
Sure.
it is here. But the people that are in the group are really diverse like that. I mean, she herself is just sort of a very regular person who is kind of an outdoors person and runs her own bait shop and is kind of a sports person in a lot of ways, But the people that are in the group are really this kind of interesting eclectic mix of professionals and young people and there's and retired housewives, and it's just kind of interesting who gets caught up in the group, and almost everybody is there because in this particular group, because it's small, because they have had actually some kind of experience that they're trying to figure out. And
do you find that in your experiences there that a lot of people become part of these groups really for the social aspect?
Absolutely.
Whether they believe or not, they want to be part of something.
Right, exactly. Well, and everybody that I know that's in this particular group, and it's a small group, it's only been around for like maybe, 5 or 6 years. So everybody that I know of in the group is a believer of one type or another, but there definitely is a social aspect to it. It's as much about forging relationships with each other and even forging relationships with the land here as it is anything else. I mean, I put together, just sort of as one of my contributions to the group, I put together a presentation called Cryptids and Native American Religious Traditions in the Hudson Valley or in New York. It's like a presentation I've done around here several times, and it's brought out, every time I do it, it brings out like tons of people because there's this kind of general interest in this group in particular in history and knowing more about the land and knowing more about even the animals that hang out on the land. I mean, I'm in the process of writing an article for a magazine about how in an odd sort of way this Bigfoot group has fostered a kind of environmentalism, if you want to call it, and for lack of a better word, among the people in this group, because they're they want to know the difference between what a Bigfoot sounds like and when it vocalizes, and what foxes sound like when they vocalize, and what bears sound like when they vocalize, because we have very complex fauna here, and
Sure.
you know, people if they're not out in the woods don't know the difference, and so they're really interested in knowing the difference, you know, and as a consequence, they're finding out more about, you know, just the animals that are living around, what the history was. So it's really interesting how it sort of, you know, creates this whole different level of understanding about just the natural world around you. You know, whether or not, you know, Bigfoot literally exists. I mean, I tend to think there's something because there are just too many reports about it, and too many native reports. I mean, you know, the Algonquin people who lived here, some of them still live here, they actually had a significant portion of their original religious and ritual life was based around the presumption that such a creature existed.
Sure. No, absolutely.
So you know, but it's interesting how it changes people's relationship to the land. That's what I think is interesting.
Well, you know, the state of Ohio has really taken advantage of this. Ohio, which has one of the highest reported incidents of Bigfoot sightings, particularly around...
They have tons of mounds, all those mounds, you know.
Yeah, there's the mounds there, and then you also have, I believe, that's south of Salt Fork State Park. Salt Fork State Park is renowned for its sightings, and, I mean, in many ways, you can almost call it the Disney World of Bigfoot hunting because, you know, there's so many of them there. But, you know, the park rangers and the park itself advertises Bigfoot there. They embrace it, unlike a lot of state and federal agencies, because they realize this is really ecotourism, like you're talking about, an appreciation for the woods and what's having you. And so it's a very smart thing to do. It's a very smart thing to do.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me. It's almost like, at least here, it's almost sort of, and it's almost sort of brought, I don't want to say the magic back to the woods, because it's also kind of scary, you know. But it is,
the woods, you know,
certainly brought back the mystique and sort of a spirituality, I guess, for want of a better word, to the woods.
No, absolutely. And going out in the woods, I was a big trancer of woods, and growing up in New Jersey and northern part of the state, and in Florida, walking, you know, canoeing and doing all things. But the thing that sometimes people have to realize is that the woods can be a very dangerous place, and Bigfoot aside, because you could be in some areas and there could be bear. You know, I've come across bear in different areas, and they're so rampant in parts of, they're starting to get in parts of Florida where the black bear are going into, like, friends of mine's communities, even out in the woods. Of course, in Florida, it's tough to walk through the woods without looking down, or sometimes up in the trees for the abundance of snakes in some areas. And you have cougars in some areas, and you have, you know, things and snakes coming out of the water, and fire ants, and, you know, down in Florida there's so many ways that you can die from things. Not that you should worry for your life every time, but there's some things you have to be worried about. And Hudson Valley, isn't that right in the midst of the largest state or federal park in the country?
Part of it. Well, part of it is, yeah, up to just up to the north
south of it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, and then there's the Algonquin, the Adirondacks, which isn't a federal park. Well, it's kind of interesting. It's not really a state park either. Everything that's enclosed within the blue line is considered to be, I don't know what you call it. It has a special status in the Constitution of New York State, and there are huge tracts of it that are undeveloped wilderness, and you can't, you know, nobody can develop there. There are no roads. It's like, you know, there's nothing there but the beasts, and humans can go there, but you absolutely have to, like, whatever you take in, you take out, that kind of thing. And
right.
they do not monitor you. So there's, you know, it's not, you know, all kinds of things could live there, including people that are unsavory. But
that can be a concern too. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
but they just kind of leave it alone, because the idea basically is, there are some parts of the world that you just need to, leave alone, essentially.
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm still upset about how much they're going into the Everglades.
Oh my God!
It's a one-of-a-kind place.
I could not believe that they were considering fracking. I was there. It was like, are you serious? With all the sinkholes in Florida?
Right.
It's like,
and
my God.
and there's nothing like it. When
I know.
when I lived on the edge of the Everglades when I first moved to Florida in 1977, and now there's an expressway that goes through there. And I used to drive across Alligator Alley, from Naples to Fort Lauderdale. It used to be a 2-lane road, and you really would have alligators sometimes going across it, not frequently, but you'd see one. And now they've come in on both sides of the coast, and it's really sad to see something like that. As a matter of fact, with the big growth in Florida, the sightings in Florida in the mid-late 70s, was really high because that's when a lot of growth was starting to come into Florida in some of these state park areas, whether it's the Everglades or up around particularly the Ocala National Forest. There was a lot of, when you see pressure in some areas, you start hearing more reports. So that, I guess, could be one chalk line in the side of perhaps it does exist that, animals are fleeing a certain area. But
right.
Yeah, it's sad. Fracking in the Everglades, that's
insane.
just ridiculous.
And completely insane. Well, and in the last presentation that I did with this topic, when we had some discussion afterwards, some of it which was recorded, which I think Jeffrey, don't you still have that on your site somewhere, that wherever
Which
Jeffrey
one?
is, the cryptid and Native American tradition in New York thing that I did.
Yeah,
link
it's
is up
in
there.
an archive.
Right. But so some of the discussion is recorded and some of it isn't. But in at least part of the discussion, one of the things that came up was just sort of an interesting inquiry that a person had that, maybe what at least some of these sightings are, whether they are of a being or not, they represent, at least the way they affect us, they represent a recognition of a relationship with the planet that many of us have walked away from. Mm-hmm. And that, if we think of the planet as being alive, like Gaia as being alive, then it would have a consciousness. And what if Bigfoot or the appearances of Bigfoot are its way of trying to communicate with us, in almost a dreamlike state, except that it's also real in a certain way, and we developed this really interesting conversation around that. What would that look like symbolically, and what would get our attention? Well, what would get our attention is that it would be sort of quasi-physical. It would be just physical enough to entrance us because that's what we're so focused in. But it would be just non-physical enough that we couldn't capture it and categorize it and put it in a zoo. It would be just beyond our reach, and it would be bringing us ever closer to the realization of what we need to have a relationship, which is with our home. And I thought that was a very interesting way to talk about the effect that, at least on some people, that this particular experience and narrative has.
Tripping me out.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm tripping you out?
Yeah. Go ahead, Joe. What were you going to say?
No, I was just saying, who knows what's going on in the world? Unfortunately, for something like that, it would be almost impossible, probably, to prove. But who knows? I mean, we tend to think that we know things. It seems like every couple of decades we declare that we know everything about our planet, and no sooner than that happens and we realize we don't know nearly as much. And that's what keeps us researching. And, I think part of the thing about Bigfoot research is that everybody loves a great mystery, and this is just another one there that people are trying to find out about. And who knows what else it could yield, like what you're talking about or not. I have no idea, but we love these stories and we love these mysteries, and they keep us, thinking and exploring.
Jeffrey, are you freaking out?
No, I'm good. I'm just listening. Oh, I know what I was going to ask. I got my keywords. I got the food. What kind of, did any of them, I know I was reading in your book that about pancakes, apples, and peanut butter. Did a lot of these people that you went out with use food to try to lure Bigfoot or anything like that? Was that a common situation with food?
I don't know if it was common, but I certainly came across several people who would use food in some manner, and I've had read other people using it as talking about leaving offerings, and where I don't know if it was Autumn Williams or somebody like that was talking about having an habituation near their home where there was repeated sightings, and I've had several people tell me that they would put food out at certain times and they'd come back the next day and it would be gone. And that in itself is probably not that exciting because you put food out in the woods, we all know some animal's going to find it. But a couple of times people would say they claim that they had something else that replaced the food that was sitting there for them, whether it was some other type of food or a rock or sticks or something like that. So, yeah, I believe food is I think some of them, I know some of the Native American stories talk about leaving offerings for the wild men or whatever the term is that each of the tribe uses there. And if you don't use that, if you don't give the offering, that's when they get angry and they start attacking and grabbing people. So who knows? Yeah, there's different people who use different. As a matter of fact, what's his name? Michael. In the Uhari Mountains, about a year after, maybe 2 years, there's a video. I don't think it's online anymore. He was putting it out there. He put rad nuts and stuff like that out there. He has a video of something grabbing some of the food at some point, and you saw him through the woods. The oddest thing, well, not oddest, maybe creepiest, scariest thing that I saw people use was this guy Mike and some of the people in the BFRO expedition in the Uhari Mountains there in North Carolina. They went to a slaughterhouse and grabbed the blood, buckets of blood. It's kind of funny. They talk about in the book about their explanation and how they talk to the people to get the blood. But my thought is, if you're throwing blood everywhere and it's drawing something in, I don't want to be there when something shows up. You're coming into
crazy show. What's it called? Monster Destination America. Those hillbillies out in the woods are like, we're going to catch us a chupacabra. We'll put a stake in there and blood everywhere and build a wood trap.
Yeah.
But I hate that show.
I just thought that was the creepiest thing I've seen. But, yeah, peanut butter and things like that. I'm told apples, buckets of apples and things like that. Yeah, many people told me they've used that. Or some of them have also used sounds of animals. You probably see anybody who's watched Finding Bigfoot knows the calls that the people use. But there was one person who actually had something broadcast from his, he had a camper, and he would broadcast sounds of babies and cats and dogs.
Man.
Try to draw them in. And there's plenty of stories, again, I can't corroborate any of them. I mean, you can read them in a lot of places. And of course, I talk a little bit about it in the book too. Is that there's lots of stories of Bigfoot being attracted to babies. The creepiest one was down in somewhere around, I think it was around Mount Dora or Lake County, just north of Orlando. There, stories about the sounds of babies. They would use baby sounds to draw people out to Bigfoot. You know, and then of course the premise is that this Bigfoot will then capture you. You think you're looking out after a little baby, and you're going to go out there and it's going to kill you. But there's also other stories equally kind. On the other hand, is that people claim that they're attracted to young children, not for any sort of nefarious reason, but they just like children, and that's why you hear these people saying, when I was a kid I saw something like that. So if you were to believe that, you see the connection. So the belief is that they're attracted to children and they're attracted to females. And again, not for necessarily, like I said, evil reasons there. And so food, people, sound, people are trying all kinds of different things to just try to draw them in.
You ever hear weird Bigfoot sex stories? I've heard one about a horse.
No, I have not heard any Bigfoot porn.
You always gotta ask.
And I'm really surprised I haven't. You know, you've heard some stories there. So no, I haven't. I've heard more likely that they, kill large pigs and carry them under their arms and run off and do that. And I remember there was a story in the National Enquirer years ago about this claim that this woman was captured out of her sleeping bag and was forced to do something like that. No, I haven't. Have you heard stories?
I've only heard one from a guy about a horse, and they found the horse's back was broken and believed that something got a hold of it sexually.
Huh.
That's the only one I've ever heard. I'm always looking for alien porn stories too. They're out there.
I've actually heard stories about that. Listening to radio shows.
Really?
I don't know. You listen to radio shows and you hear people talking about it, while they're sleeping and or they're half awake and things like that. So, but with Bigfoot, no, not so much.
There's one with the alien that the only one I really remember. Some hot blonde Nordic chick came down and shagged this dude, and then he died a couple months later or something like that. From space.
That sounds like something out of Greek mythology.
Yeah, that's pretty sad. I mean, it's gotta be you're happy and then you're dead.
Well, that's kind of the way life really is, actually.
So alien chicks are like praying mantis chicks.
Oh God, yeah. Man,
but who knows? I don't know. I can't remember what story that is, but I know it's out there for sure.
Well, I'll tell you what. When we were just talking, I typed in Bigfoot porn, and there's 10 pages of stuff on here. So
there's a lot of books.
People can go at it and check on it.
There are some books. I've never read them, where they're like romance, smut, sex, Bigfoot books. We talked about them with Dave Coleman. He wrote that Bigfoot filmography. I don't know if you've ever come across it. It's pretty good. It's a Bigfoot filmography, and it's just a big book of every Bigfoot movie ever, and you'll be surprised. There's like a gazillion. Like a gazillion.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Of course, there's monkey movies and stuff too in there, but it's pretty good. But so, what's on your future agenda? Are you gonna tackle any more paranormal subjects or any other weird subjects like Bigfoot in the future, or what's up?
I don't think I would, even though I would be more than glad to. I've always been intrigued when the show Ghost Hunters came out. I'm intrigued by ghosts a whole lot, but there's been an awful lot written about that, so I don't know if there's anything I could write that hasn't already been written on something like that. I'm intrigued by all of this stuff. I'm intrigued by the notion of aliens. I'm intrigued by any of these cool. I think it's, I dig that stuff. It's really cool. But no, my next, I'm thinking I've got a couple of possible projects that I'm looking into. One's a nonfiction book again, and then the other's a fiction book that I'm doing some work on. I have been for a while, so that'll be the next thing.
Nice. Well, let me see. Had some, did Dogman ever come up any on your adventures?
People talking about, sure. I know that most of the stories around our way tend to be, that I've heard at least, was in the Wisconsin area. But I started listening to, I think it was a Dogman podcast at one point, listening to learn more about it. So, yeah,
one thing interesting, there's a coyote Native American folklore story where he's hanging out with Hairy Man. So basically, it's a Dogman and Bigfoot story.
Yeah, I wonder if it's the same thing or not. I mean, who knows? I mean, you got that and the chupacabra and several other derivations of Bigfoot.
I know when they always find those chupacabra, like that bodies and stuff, it's always pretty disappointing if that's what it is. Like some hairless dog or something.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like coyotes with mange or something.
Yeah. It's always pretty disappointing.
Although coyotes with mange are freaking ugly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really ugly, poor things, miserable things.
I think there's coyotes around here. I think they've murdered some of my cats.
Oh yeah, they're not even up around in Illinois. We live there's woods all around us, and you don't leave your cats out. There's all kinds of coyotes, absolutely.
Yeah, we also got Florida panthers. I didn't know they existed until I heard one.
Yeah.
What kind of panther?
It's called a Florida panther.
Oh yeah, we actually had a sighting when I was in Altamont Springs, just north of Orlando. We lived near the Little Kaiva River, and our neighbors had one in the backyard. Went through one night. So, and my wife used to see them, and also bobcats. A lot of bobcats.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have this thing that they're called koi wolves, and they're
koi wolves.
They're just look them up. There's actually been a National Geographic documentary about them, but they're called koi wolves, and they are a new hybrid canid that is a mix of coyotes and wolves, a particular type of wolf, and even some dogs, some feral dogs. And this is a hybrid species that originated up in a secluded wooded region in Ontario. And it's real. I mean, it's an actual real thing, and it's on its way to becoming a new canid superspecies. And they have started to make their way down into New York. I've actually seen a couple of them. They're kind of interesting and rather unusual animals in the sense that they, like coyotes, they're more adaptable, and they're not as pack-like. You know what I mean? They tend to be more solitary. But like wolves, they are extremely intelligent, and they do not. Coyotes tend to be a little bit more timid around people, and that's part of how they've survived.
Absolutely.
But these koi wolves are not timid around people at all, and they often, because they don't live in big packs, they often live in urban areas. They actually filmed one on a rooftop in the Bronx, and it got away. It actually they didn't. The person who filmed it
was on somebody's roof.
It was on the roof of a house. It had jumped up on the roof. I mean, it wasn't a tenement building. It was like a regular house that had sort of, one of those that have sort of a flat roof. Maybe two stories high. But the person who filmed it didn't even know what they were seeing, because coyotes don't go into the city quite like that. I mean, not into the city. They'll go into suburbs. But these koi wolves apparently will go everywhere. They have, and nothing really, to our knowledge, has happened yet, but they have been caught on CCTV stalking humans. And it's kind of like, biologists are just kind of freaking. It's because it's interesting, and it's totally cool that, the thought of a new super canid that if you think about it, has the canniness and adaptability and intelligence of both wolves and coyotes. that's kind of like, whoa. You know.
That's interesting. That's very interesting.
Yeah, it's but just there's actually been a very interesting documentary that's been done. They've been able to biologically pinpoint where this mix took place, and it's estimated that their populations will gradually, at least in the northern areas here, will gradually probably supplant coyotes because they are much more aggressive than coyotes. Actually, will prey on coyotes. So which
is actually probably a good thing because coyotes are lost in that natural predator of wolves, and that's why they're expanding so much. So
exactly.
Yeah.
But like coyotes, they're craftier and they can hide because they aren't pack animals. I mean, they usually take like one mate, you know, but they don't travel in huge packs. So it's just interesting. But that's something that people have had to start watching out for here because, you know, they will obviously go after people's cattle and sheep and like I said, there's no evidence that they've gone after people yet, but I figure that's just a matter of time.
Yeah, if there are a bunch of them and strong, I'm sure all animals, if they feel like they need to, probably will go after the human.
Yeah, I actually saw one. I didn't know what it was either at first when I first saw it because it was bigger than a coyote and the color was wrong, you know. And because for a few years ago, I lived in a rural area here, and I was coming home from teaching a class, and at broad daylight, like 1 p.m., broad daylight, there was this very large canid just sitting in the middle of the road, in the middle of a gravel road, and it wouldn't move. As I came up to it, it just wouldn't move. And so I finally stopped, like right behind it, and I opened the window and I yelled at it. And I said, "Hey, what are you doing? You need to move." You know. And so it sort of looked back at me, and then it moved over to the side. And as I took off, you know, to drive, it actually ran beside me for almost a quarter of a mile, and just ran next to the car because I couldn't go fast. It was a gravel road, and it just ran next to the car and just looked at me. And then just at some point peeled off and went off, and it was like, because I know coyotes. I'm from Kansas, you know. I know coyotes, and I was like, what the fuck? I'm sorry, what the hell is this? And because I'd never seen anything quite like it, and then I found out that it probably was one of those coy wolves, and no fear of me whatsoever at all. It was a beautiful animal. I mean, it was kind of a, you know, it was sort of lanky like a coyote, but it was bigger, much bigger, and it was a darker color, almost a charcoal black, but not maybe quite so dark, and these beautiful golden eyes that I associate with wolves because I've met a couple, you know, semi-domesticated wolves, and it was just, you could tell it was just really intelligent. It was just looking right at me, you know. So.
Wow.
I think that the planet is doing a lot of things right now that are, you know, it's signaling its change. It's learning species are learning how to adapt to us and how to adapt to, you know, the world that's coming, you know, with climate change and everything. And it's fascinating.
Well, species have always changed, so.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's the nature of the world, certainly. Humans have changed and adapted, and so have all kinds of animals. One animal comes in, and another animal takes over. And when I lived in Florida, there was the brown and the green anoles, the little lizards you'd see on screens and everything.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
It used to be mostly green, and then the browns have been far more aggressive. And I don't know that there's many greens left down there. And, you know, some people would say, well, that's horrible. They came across and came on boats and destroyed it. But that's the history of, you know, of the world, is with one species coming in and taking over from another.
Well, and then you've got all of those snakes that people, pythons or whatever, that people have released into Florida. they go on these, like, what are they, python hunts or something. They decided they were going to try to eradicate them, and then they just gave up.
Well, actually, they haven't. There's some recent. I keep up with that actually because having lived down there, that's probably the thing I'm least fond of in Florida is knowing that there's either pythons or boas, which I believe they can cross. They can produce offspring by mating with one another.
Oh, so they can they can hybridize too.
Right, but what they've done, and there was a recent study, I think it was in Collier County, which is Naples, that they're putting transmitters on females, or sometimes on males, and they've learned that these snakes will get in and mate or fight to mate in large balls of snake, which is kind of scary to even think about, and there'll be as many as 5 or 6 males trying to get a female at the same time, and they're oftentimes down in holes and things like that. By putting transmitters on these snakes and re-releasing them, and they're able to sometimes find more of these females then and pull them out. Because one female can, I think I read, 80 to 100 offspring can come from one female. So they're hoping that this new approach, at least that's what I'm reading, they're hoping this new approach would be another thing to help fight off the snakes there, but you're never going to get rid of a species like that. I mean, we have it here in the Midwest. We have the Asian carp, which have really taken over the rivers in the Ohio and the Mississippi and the Missouri. And once a species in, it's almost impossible to extract it from it.
Oh, I know. Yeah, we've got these things called emerald borers. And they have destroyed the ash population. Just the native ashes are just wrecked. I mean,
it's sad. It's creating all these bulbs everywhere. Up in North Carolina, you're finding there's a lot of that too. If you go up to Mount Pisgah and in that whole region, there's big sloths that are just getting killed, and it's just so sad because, as you know, there's such beautiful trees and beautiful forests.
Yeah,
and even so, it's sad.
Yeah, and to me it's sad because in Europe they've already had that devastation there. They've lost a lot of their ash trees there, and so it got over here, and it's like, wow, I mean, I think what's difficult is and this goes back to what people were talking about at that Bigfoot presentation that I gave. It's like what's difficult for us as we're living here now is that we're sort of the generation who is watching the transition, watching the change, seeing the destruction from the world that was to a world that will be, and it's difficult to watch.
Yeah, it is. Oh, it's very difficult to watch.
Well, hey, we got to end this
this epic conversation.
This epic conversation. Do you have a site or anything, Joe?
Yeah, I have a website. It's my name, Joe, and then Gisondi, GISONDI.com. On that site, I have information. I need to update it with. On that one, it's mostly places that I've talked to, like this show and other ones that I have on there. Really, the best way for me to interact with it would be on Twitter, where it's at Monster Trek, TREKJG, and I retweet things and write some things on social media that way. So that would be one way to get a hold of me.
Where's the best place to get it? Amazon?
Oh no, just on the book. Yeah, probably easier for everybody. I mean, they sell it through the University of Nebraska Press, but most people are buying it from Amazon because it's far more convenient for everybody, and our publisher just ships them over to there and they sell them.
All right. Well, we appreciate it. We've enjoyed the show, and thanks for stopping by. Great to have you on and add you to our Squatch files.
Oh, yeah.
All right,
you were fun. Thanks.
All right. Thanks. I appreciate that.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week with Deborah Diamond. We're doing a show about the afterlife, so we'll see you then. Have a good weekend, everybody. Good night.
Bye.